Hello, and welcome to my channel. I'm Margaret, and here I share real-life stories from my friends at the nursing home. The day my son forgot my birthday, I told no one. Not because I wanted to protect him, but because I was too ashamed to admit it still hurt. I turned 66 that morning. The kettle whistled at 6:45, just like it had every morning since Roger died. I buttered my toast, sliced half a banana, and sat by the window in my robe, watching the neighbours walk their dogs. A small square envelope sat unopened on the table. It was from the pharmacy, a discount coupon for arthritis cream. No card, no call, not even a damn emoji. By 3 p.m., I'd refreshed my phone so many times I thought the screen might give out. Around 5, I checked the ringer. Maybe it had been off. It wasn't. At 7:15, I opened Facebook, just in case. He hadn't posted anything. But his girlfriend, Danielle, the one with a podcast about emotional boundaries, had shared a story. Them in a spa, holding glasses of champagne. I went to bed without brushing my teeth. If this had been the first time, I might have written it off, blamed the stress, the job, life. But it had been a slow build, over years, decades even. First came the small lies. The, "I forgot I borrowed your credit card" kind of lies. Then the blame. I hadn't pushed him enough in school, or I'd pushed too hard. He said I projected on him, hovered, guilt-tripped, enabled, controlled. Every therapy buzzword he could find to explain away the fact that I once worked 2 jobs so he could have drum lessons and orthodontics. He stopped inviting me to things 6 years ago, said it was just easier if Danielle's family came. They were chiller, less intense. Meaning, they had money. They didn't wear thrifted sweaters or bring lasagna in Pyrex dishes. They knew how to keep their voices soft and their opinions unspoken. I'd missed his engagement dinner because he never told me it was happening. I found out from someone tagging him in a picture. He claimed he meant to tell me, but it came together fast. He still came by sometimes, when they needed something. A document signed, my tax return, a cosign. Once he asked me to list him as a dependent again, at 32. "It's just paperwork, Mom," he said. "You're not even using the deduction." When I brought up the birthday, weeks later, he said, "Oh God, were you expecting something? I thought you were over that stuff." Over it? As if a mother could ever be over being remembered. Then came the email. Subject line, "Hey, quick thing." No greeting, no, "How are you?" Just a paragraph, maybe 6 lines, asking if I could help out with a bridge loan. Just something to float them until Danielle's brand sponsor paid out. They'd maxed their cards, and the podcast ad campaign had run long, but it was just a hiccup. He signed it -J, not even love Jason. My finger hovered over the keyboard. I could feel the heat rising in my chest. A shameful, familiar blend of hope and fury. Not because I was angry at the request, because I knew I would say yes, again, until I didn't. Instead of clicking reply, I opened a new tab. Googled adult piano classes near me. I don't even remember typing it. It was something I'd dreamed of for years. Before marriage, before the baby, I used to play in the music room at school after hours. I'd sit on the old wooden bench and just disappear. After Roger and I married, I sold the upright to pay for Jason's tuition deposit. I found a listing. Beginner piano for adults, 60 plus. Rediscover joy through music. Tuesday and Thursday nights. Community center, 8 blocks from me. Cost, $265. The exact amount Jason had asked for. I didn't reply to his email. I transferred the money to myself, printed the confirmation, and slid it into a folder labeled just mine. I didn't cry. I didn't feel triumphant. I just sat there, hands still over the keyboard, breathing like someone who'd finally stood up after kneeling too long. When Jason finally called, 3 days later, I let it ring. And ring. And ring? Let me tell you something no one warns you about. The older you get, the less space you're allowed to take up. They call it graceful aging, but it really just means invisible. At 66, you become a coat rack for other people's expectations. Quiet, helpful, convenient. Not a person, not really. Just a warm presence with a debit card and emotional availability. I had done everything right. I'd stayed married to a man who left me emotionally bankrupt. I'd raised a son who got straight A's and even won a city poetry contest. I had worked front desk jobs, part-time filing gigs, and late shifts at the grocery store to make sure he had new shoes when the cool kids did. And yet, somehow, I was the burden. Danielle once told me, in her gentle, passive-aggressive voice, that I had a scarcity mindset. This, after I offered to help fold laundry while visiting their apartment. It's just, you don't have to do everything, she said, smiling, while pushing my hand away from a damp towel. You don't always need to prove your worth. But what neither of them understood, what no one who's never gone without understands, is that sometimes proving your worth is the only thing you have left. The first night of piano class, I wore my navy cardigan with the mother-of-pearl buttons, the one I always saved for holidays. I don't know why. Maybe because it felt like a new beginning. Maybe because I needed armor. There were 9 of us, all women, all older, some divorced, some widowed. One woman, Naomi, said she came because her adult daughter had told her she was too sad to be around. I knew that tone. I knew that shame. When our instructor, Thomas, asked us why we were there, I said, because I forgot how to listen to myself. He smiled like he understood. It was slow at first. I hadn't read music in over 40 years. My fingers felt stiff. The keys felt foreign. But something strange happened by the 3rd week. I started waking up, excited. Not anxious, not sad, not resentful. Just excited, like I used to feel before field trips in school. I started keeping the music book open on my coffee table, started humming scales while washing dishes, started saying no to things, to favors, to late-night calls, to errands. Jason texted again, then again. Are you okay? Hello? Can you call me? This is important. But I didn't reply. He didn't ask what was going on. He didn't apologize. Just circled the same request like a shark. We're tight right now. Just a short-term thing. It's not a big deal. You've always helped before. Exactly, I had always helped. And now I wasn't. I went to the piano room early one day, just to sit, just to breathe. The keys were warm under my fingers. I closed my eyes and let the notes drift. My left pinky ached from arthritis. My foot tapped out the rhythm anyway. Somewhere between C major and G, I realized something. I hadn't thought about Jason in 2 hours. And when I did, I didn't feel guilty. I felt light. The silence didn't go unnoticed. Jason's messages got longer, then shorter, then aggressive. Mom, seriously, what's going on? Did you get hacked or something? You're being really weird right now. Then came the voicemail, the first in years. Hey, I don't know what this is. If this is some kind of lesson or something, fine, I get it. You're mad I forgot your birthday. You're holding it over me like a child. I said I was sorry, didn't I? But this? Ignoring me? After all we've done for you? That's messed up. All we've done for you. As if I hadn't bought their first crib, paid for the deposit on their wedding venue, cooked 200 wedding cupcakes myself because they couldn't afford a caterer. I'd ironed napkins until 2 in the morning while Danielle scrolled Pinterest and said, "Make sure they're folded like little tuxedos, okay?" But the worst part wasn't what Jason said. It was the voice under it, that clipped, polished voice in the background. "Danielle, just leave it. She's being dramatic. She does this. She does this." As if I was some tantrum-prone old woman acting out of spite. As if 25 years of sacrificing, mending, shrinking, giving, loving could be reduced to a bad mood. That night, I put on my coat and walked until the cold felt like a second skin. I didn't bring my phone. I passed closed shops, lit windows, families eating dinner behind curtains. I kept walking until my breath came in clouds and my fingers went numb. And I told myself something I had never dared before. You deserve better, even now, even still. A week later, a package arrived. No return address. Just a padded envelope with my name and a familiar handwriting, shaky but unmistakable. Inside, my old recipe binder. The one I'd let Jason borrow 5 years ago when he and Danielle wanted to make heritage dishes for a podcast episode. I'd forgotten all about it, but it had not been forgotten by them. Because inside every page had notes. Too salty. Maybe cut the butter next time. Danielle suggests replace ham with vegan option. Too old-fashioned. Needs updating. And then, on the back of the pecan pie page, scribbled in blue ink, change name to Danielle's Southern Caramel Tart. Sounds trendier. My chest ached. It wasn't just that they took my food. It was that they'd renamed it. Like I didn't exist. Like erasing me made it more theirs. I didn't throw the binder out. I copied the pages, every last one. I put them into a new folder, clean and white, and labeled it in bold black letters. Monsieur Langford, Originals. Then I took the old binder, with their notes, their edits, their cruelty, and slid it under the kitchen sink, behind the trash bags, where it belonged. Piano class hit its stride in the 4th week. Thomas started giving us solo pieces, just little melodies. A minuet here, a lullaby there. I chose one called Autumn's End, software haunting, a little sad. The music came easier than I expected, like my fingers remembered something my mind had forgotten. Naomi, the woman with the too sad daughter, stayed after class one day. She asked if I wanted to get a coffee. We sat at a little bakery on Belmore Street. She told me her daughter had moved to Arizona and only called when she needed help with the kids. Told me her husband had died 7 years ago. Told me she'd tried dating, but the apps are a horror show. Then she looked at me and said, "Do you think they'll ever remember us?" I didn't know who they was. Our children, our husbands, the world. I just said, "I'm starting to think it doesn't matter." Jason's next message was different. "Danielle says maybe we should take a break for a while. You're clearly going through something, and we don't want to trigger you." Trigger me? Like I was a bomb. No, not even. A malfunction. A liability. Something to be managed. That night, I bought a small electric piano for my apartment. It was used, scratched. The left pedal stuck a little. But it was mine. And when it arrived, I didn't tell anyone. I set it up by the window, laid my music folder on the stand, and played until my wrists ached and the city lights went out one by one. Danielle posted a reel that week. Her in the kitchen, pouring sugar, dusting pecans, laughing. Caption: Grandma's secret recipe, with a vegan twist. A slice of my pie, the exact one. Renamed, reclaimed. She had 26,000 likes by morning. And a pinned comment. "So proud of you for honoring your roots while making it your own." My stomach turned. It wasn't the theft. It was the smile. How easy it was to wear my history like a costume and throw me out of the theatre. The next class, I asked Thomas a question. How do you know if you're any good, if it's too late to matter? He looked at me for a long time. Then he said, You showed up. That's all art asks. That night, I opened a blog. Just a simple one. Black text on white background. No pictures, no comments. Just words. I called it, after the second silence. The first post was a recipe for pecan pie, but I didn't call it that. I called it What My Son Forgot to Taste. Jason didn't read it. Danielle did. I know because the next day the reel was gone. And I got a one-line email. Was that really necessary? I didn't respond. But I printed the email, folded it into a paper crane, and placed it on the piano. My little memorial. To the girl I used to be. The woman who would have apologized, who would have sent a check the next day, who would have said, I didn't mean it like that. That woman had played her last note. I began to wake up with music in my head. Not melodies I'd learned, new ones, tiny things, just whispers. I bought a notebook, staff paper, started writing them down. I asked Thomas, Is it silly to try composing at this age? He said, It's silly not to. On my next birthday, the one after the silence, I didn't wait for a call. I got dressed early, put on perfume, wore lipstick. I walked to the community center with a tray of warm mini pies, sat down at the piano, and played Autumn's End. By memory. When I opened my eyes, the room was clapping. Naomi was crying, and I felt something shift inside me. Something that said, I am still here, and I sound beautiful. 2 weeks after my birthday, Jason showed up at my door. No warning, no call. Just 3 loud knocks that made me spill tea on my music notebook. I didn't answer right away. I stared through the peephole like it was a telescope into the past. He looked older, not in the graceful way, in the bloated, clenched way. His face was drawn tight. He wore a button-down shirt that didn't quite fit, the top button undone, collar askew. He looked like someone who hadn't slept much. Or, well. When I opened the door, he smiled like nothing had happened. Hey, Ma. It felt like someone calling me from a different planet. I didn't smile. Jason. I was in the area. We both knew that was a lie. I live on the edge of Queens, and he works in Manhattan. No one is ever in the area. He shifted from foot to foot. I stepped aside. He walked in like he owned the place, looked around, paused at the piano. He touched one of the keys, absently. This new? I didn't answer. I just watched his fingers. They hovered, then withdrew. He sat on the couch and started his pitch like it was a business meeting. It was worse than I thought. Not a bridge loan, not a temporary setback. He'd drained their savings, took a risk on a crypto app his friend guaranteed would triple their return. It collapsed within a week. Danielle was furious, of course. She'd asked him to fix it. So here he was, tail between his legs, but still too proud to kneel. We're not talking about much, he said. Just enough to cover the card minimums, maybe rent, a few thousand, until the brand deal clears. I laughed. Softly, quietly. The kind of laugh you make when someone steps on your grave and calls it a dance. You think I'm a bank? He frowned. Number, come on, don't be dramatic. I nodded. Do you remember the last time you came here not asking for something? He blinked. Do you remember the last thing you did for me that wasn't attached to a receipt or a condition? He opened his mouth. Closed it. I'm your mother, I said. Not your emergency fund. Not your PR firm. Not your garbage disposal. Your mother. The woman who braided your hair when you had chicken pox, who sewed your Halloween costumes by hand, who worked Christmas shifts so you could have new shoes in January. I didn't ask you to do that. And there it was. The sentence that took the air out of the room. I stood still. He looked up at me, and for the first time in a long time, I saw him not as my son, but as a man. A man shaped by softness he never earned and arrogance he never questioned. And I saw myself, not as a victim, but as the architect of his entitlement. I know you didn't ask, I said. You never had to. I gave you everything before you ever learned what it cost. He ran a hand through his hair. So what now? You cut me off? Just like that? No, I said, voice steady. I remembered to start with myself. He stood up, angry now. You're punishing me. Over a birthday? Over a pie? No, I said again. I'm releasing you from the illusion that I will always save you. He didn't slam the door, but he didn't say goodbye either. That night, I played until my fingers ached. Not the lessons, my own music, clumsy, imperfect, raw. I wrote a new piece, called it September Sun. It wasn't a lament, it wasn't even sad. It was complicated, just like him. I cried while writing it, not out of pain, but out of clarity. Naomi invited me to an open mic night at the community center. She was reading poems. A man named Joe was singing old jazz standards. They said I should bring something. I almost said no, then I didn't. I wore my good scarf, the wine-colored one Roger used to call fancy. I brought my folder, sat behind the keyboard on the stage, took a long breath, and played September Sun. When it ended, the room was quiet. Then the applause came, slow, gentle, full. Naomi squeezed my hand. You just told a story without saying a word, she whispered. I left before the crowd could find me. Walked home in the crisp night air. My phone buzzed once. Jason. We're moving. Danielle's brother has a place in Florida. It's temporary. No apology, no warmth. Just logistics. I didn't reply. Instead, I wrote another blog post. What I packed when he left. It read, I packed my silence, my dignity, my worn-out apron. I packed my music and left the door open. If he finds his way back, it will not be to the woman who said yes too quickly. It will be to the woman who learned how to play with both hands. And stop when she wants to. I began teaching piano. Just once a week, to 2 girls, ages 9 and 11. Their mother, a nurse, found me through the community bulletin. The girls giggled during scales, missed notes, smudged music pages with peanut butter fingers. I loved every second. When I walked them out one night, the younger one looked up at me and asked, Were you always a music teacher? And I said, No. I just didn't know I was allowed to be. I found a small publisher through a friend of Thomas's. A little anthology for seniors rediscovering art. They included my piece, September Sun. When the printed copy arrived, I held it like it was a newborn. It wasn't fame, it wasn't money, but it was mine. I still keep Jason's number in my phone. I don't delete it, but I no longer wait for it to light up. He calls sometimes, not often. When he does, I let it go to voicemail. Not out of revenge, but because I'm usually teaching, or composing, or just living. And I don't drop everything anymore to prove I'm worth dialing. The letter came on a rainy Tuesday. Handwritten, real ink, my name spelled in full, Margaret Ellen Langford, in the center of the envelope, just like my mother used to do. It was from Jason. The penmanship was uneven, unsure. I stared at it for an hour before opening it. I made a cup of tea, dried the dishes I'd left out, sat at the piano and played the first few bars of Autumn's End. Then I opened it. Mom, I don't know if you'll even read this. Danielle and I split up. We're not telling anyone yet, but it's done. She said I was selfish, said I never learned how to hold anything unless it gave me something back. I think she's right. I didn't understand what I did. Not really. Not until I heard that piece you posted, September Sun. I played it 5 times. Each time I felt like you were sitting right there, telling me the story I never let you say out loud. I'm sorry. For the forgetting, the expecting, the taking. I'm in Tampa now, living small, working freelance, listening more. I don't know what to ask. I don't know what's fair. But I'd like to hear you play again, in person, if that's something you'd want. Love. Jason. I read it once. Then again. And then I placed it on the piano. I didn't cry. I didn't rush to reply. Because this wasn't a story about mending a boy. It was about meeting the woman I'd buried beneath the years. A few days later, Naomi and I hosted a recital. We called it Second Acts. It was small, folding chairs, paper programs printed at the library, and a punch bowl full of sparkling cider. But it was ours. I wore a soft grey dress, a blue shawl around my shoulders. My hair, thinner now, was clipped back with the tortoise-shell barrette Jason had given me for Mother's Day when he was 9. The room filled with faces I'd come to know. Women who had left husbands, children who had left mothers, caretakers and teachers, and people who thought their best years were behind them. I opened the recital with What My Son Forgot to Taste. Not the pie, the song I had written last month, soft and rich and a little spicy. Afterward, a woman from the back came forward. She said, "You played like someone who forgave herself." I said, "I finally did." The piano became my clock. Mornings were scales, afternoons were lessons, evenings were composition. I wrote a piece for Naomi, called it Too Sad to Stay. I wrote one for myself, Ellen's Waltz, and one for the girl I used to be, Thrift Store Symphony. My folder grew thick with pages. My fingers loosened, my back straightened. I found a rhythm that didn't need anyone's permission. One day, I found a letter in my mailbox, typed this time, from a local arts council. "We are pleased to inform you that your submission, September Sun, has been selected for inclusion in our New Voices over 60 series." I stood in the hallway for a long time, holding the paper like a warm loaf of bread. Later that night, I sent one message. To Jason. "Thank you for writing. I'm glad you listened. I have a recital next month. You're welcome to come. As a guest, not a project. Love, Mom." He didn't reply right away. But 3 weeks later, he showed up. In the back row. Alone. He clapped, stayed quiet, left a note on my seat. "You sound like yourself again. I'm sorry I never learned the tune." That was enough. We don't talk often. That's okay. We don't pretend either. That's better. He's learning to hold silence without rushing to fill it. I'm learning to enjoy noise I make just for me. I still play every morning. The piano is by the window now. Light falls across the keys just right around 9 a.m. Sometimes, when I finish a song, I whisper to myself, "You didn't disappear. You just waited for your cue." One of my students, the little one, the peanut butter-fingered one, gave me a crayon drawing last week. It was me, at the piano. She'd drawn my scarf, my hair, even the music notes floating in the air. At the bottom, she wrote, "Miss Margaret plays with her heart open." I taped it above the piano, right next to the blog title, After the Second Silence. And that's where I'll end my story. Not with revenge, with resonance. Because in the end, I didn't need to punish him. I just needed to stop punishing myself and start playing in my own key.